about taking a 2-week experience or a month experience, and we're creating an environment where kids, whether they're 8, 12, 14, they're growing, they're changing.
Nowhere else do you get a Christian community that comes obviously by God's design to one place in the summer, and the campers come and they're immersed in a Christian community.
It teaches kids that faith is not just something that you do on a Sunday morning, but it's something that you live out.
And they can have fun. And I know certainly from my perspective that realizing that God is fun.
It was the dark days of the war, World War II, but Dad had this burning vision to start a camp.
But he felt that the Christian camps were missing the mark by having too much sit down and preach at the kids. He felt that the natural experience of just having a fantastic camp with leaders who knew the Lord and could live it in front of the kids would be a better way to reach them.
He went up to New Hampshire and they walked around the property, and Dad was just amazed. And he said, I feel that this is of God.
Doc A. and Dougie bought the property from Bertha Damon, and that was when camp began.
When I first came, there was only total 11 people on staff. The only place you could wash was down at the waterfront. Sunday morning was a bath in your birthday suits.
Camp was quite different than what it is today. It was much smaller, and facilities were much more limited, but we had a great time, and camp made a big difference in my life.
I started coming here when I was 10 years old in 1957. I was a city kid, and so it was the first time I'd really seen woods and the stars, and the notion of an outdoor life began here.
Every incoming day, the parents would come in and say, but now we have to take our daughter to some other camp, and we don't like it as well. Why don't you start a camp for girls?
And so finally, 20 years later, they started Deer Run.
Our family had never been exposed to the gospel. So coming to Deer Run was the first time I ever heard about Jesus being Lord.
At first I was reluctant to accept the whole idea of women in the camp, but it turned out to be good.
When you first started the girls' camp, the idea was everything should be separate.
And we even had 2 separate HPers. I remember at our place that we sat at, there was a little placemat in the center of the table, and we would write notes to the boys who sat at that table the first sitting, and then they'd write back to us the second sitting. And that was about all we knew of the boys' camp.
Bit by bit, they found that it was good to integrate. I remember my husband talking about one of the first trips that they took the girls along, and it just was perfect. He said it was absolutely the thing to do.
Now, today, I think we have the best of both worlds. We're somewhat co-ed in that, all of our daily activities are co-ed, but we have that separateness too. The boys have their living area and their cabins, and Deer Run has theirs, and our evening programs are very separate and very different, and I like the flavor of that.
As a non-Christian, I thought these people were crazy. I didn't know what they were talking about. They all had their own lingo, their own music. I'd never heard any of this. I brought all my tapes for Beatles and, all the rock music stuff, and they kind of took that away from me quickly.
When I started out coming to camp, I was always more interested in the activities and not so much the actual godly aspect of it.
Until I came to camp, I really never heard the gospel presented in a concise and clear fashion with a challenge to respond to God's call to follow Him. So I prayed one night in July 1967 in the Chipmunk cabin to receive Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. Jim Downey was my counselor. Skip Stam was my junior counselor. And I'll never forget that night. And funny side note, I was on the upper bunk. Bob Strodel was on the lower bunk.
So I came from a home, not a Christian home, but a church home. And it was really here at camp that I first experienced the love of God. And that power of that God loved me and the people here loved me. That news that God loved me changed my whole life. I was really able to love others then.
So Tower Kuntz my old counselor in the bear cabin one night. First night of camp, he said, guys, if you ever need me, or if you ever want to talk, whether it be 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that, feel free to wake me up. And there was this one night, probably 2 or 3 weeks into the camp that year, and I couldn't sleep that night. So at probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up Tower, and we went outside. It was pitch black. We went outside by the bear cabin, and we probably talked for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and I came to Christ that night.
I was out here in the wilderness. It was beautiful, and people loved me no matter what foolish things I was up to, and I was. They just loved me and accepted me for who I was. And so one day I was walking down to the dining hall. I was little Jenny, and I had to set the tables with Jeannie Andreessen, her dad, as we know, helped start the camps. And she said, gee, I haven't talked to Jesus in weeks. I think he must really miss me. And I went over the side of the road and I said, God, you must really miss me. I've never talked to you. And that moment I knew that Jesus was real.
Those were the years that really set the course for the rest of my life. I went lots of different ways, but the foundation of what I did and what I found for fun and enjoyment, and the woman I married, what we did together, all chokes me up. All started here.
Probably the seminal point for camp after its founding in each camp was in 1973 when the camps were closed.
And my dad came to us and Mom, and they said, we're going to have to sell Brookwoods.
Saturday, August 19th, 1972. That was the date the camp closed. It was a horrible, horrible day for our family. And coincidentally, that was also my birthday. I told my mom that it was the worst birthday of my life.
And when I heard that camp was closing, I said, no, this won't happen. I said, I'll obey and I'll pack up and go home, but my ironing board and the things I usually leave in the attic are going to stay. Little did I know God was already working on a miracle.
Dad called. He said, I've received a call from George Bennett. They're talking about maybe making an offer and buying the property and continuing it as a Christian camp.
The camp was under contract for sale to a group of real estate people.
The principal figure in the real estate development was a fellow named Joe Hyde. Joe was already working with the town of Alton to turn the camp property into a PUD, or a planned unit development. And he has plot plans laid out for housing units and beaches and all kinds of things that totally destroyed the camp.
I went to Hartford to see Joe. He said, well, really I can't do anything because I have business partners and we've invested a lot of money. We said, well, will you think about it and talk to your partners, and we'll come down in another week.
Well, the day approached, and Joe, Mr. Hyde, came into the meeting.
He said, I had a dream that I was walking through Brookwoods. I realized that there was somebody walking side of me. And he said, at first I didn't know who it was. Then I realized that it was the Lord Jesus Christ. And he said, Joe Hyde, this property must stay as a camp, a Christian camp. It cannot be sold. And Joe kind of burst out at that point after he told us the story. And he said, you can have the camp. I don't want to be struck down by lightning.
And I never want to forget that miracle because it was amazing. But I have to tell you the joy I had when all of this developed, to take that ironing board down out of the attic and set it up.
We've had a lot of better birthdays since then.
In 1998, a man named Ken Olson
donated about 250 acres to Christian Camps and Conferences Incorporated to start a camp for kids on Heald Pond.
But a few months, weeks later, he called and asked Bob if he were to donate the entire 7,000-acre parcel of land that is now Moose River Outpost, would Bob be able to use that also?
And it was like, yes, this is going to be good.
After Bob had sort of regained his composure from hearing about that, he said, absolutely, we'd love to, and we could certainly turn that into something special.
And we're excited about that because on 7,000 acres up there in the woods of Maine, we can do some totally creative, unique things that we never even dreamed about doing in New Hampshire.
Moose River Outpost works really hard to create exciting adventures that not only show kids a great time, but also challenge them while they're there.
They are able to learn more about who they are, who God created them to be, and how they can continue living that way after they go home.
For 65 years, we've had the privilege of ministering to kids and young adults, and it's just been a wonderful experience for us here. We'd like to continue that, and we need some help doing that.
The Capital Campaign is about making camp in its purest and greatest form available to kids.
I want to see the scholarship fund grow because I want to see more kids have the opportunity who might not otherwise have the opportunity to come to camp.
Most people don't realize it, but probably a good third of the people that come here to camp get some form of scholarship.
You want to keep camp accessible to everybody. Everybody deserves to have the kind of memories that come out of a place like this.
Moose River Outpost is at a point where it needs new facilities.
But right now we've only got 4 cabins. And as Bob is fond of saying, you can't minister to empty bunks. And without those cabins, there's ministry that we feel like we've left on the table. We could have done more.
We'd like to have 8 cabins up there. That way we can minister to more kids over the course of the summer. The kitchen at Brookwoods and Deer Run was last upgraded in 1983, and it was designed then for a total capacity of 180 meals per serving. Right now, we're over 425 meals per serving, so we have a problem.
We just don't have enough space. A lot of times we literally have to take 15, 20 cases of product out of the way to get the cases that are in the back that we need for the next meal.
And it's a huge tax on our kitchen staff to have to provide meals 6 different points in the day rather than 3.
We also have a lot of kids too that are coming with food allergies and other issues that we need to address too. Additional space will allow us to do that. It will also allow us to have more storage for some of the things that we buy. It will allow us to buy in bulk, allow us to put more things in the freezer so we can lower the cost to the kids of coming to camp here.
I would hope that as part of this campaign, every alumnus, whether they're college grad and their first job out of college, or they're a longtime alum and perhaps people of means, would prayerfully consider a response to contribute to this fund, because I think, again, this is going to be a centerpiece of the ministry going forward.
I think that's where we are now, is trying to find ways to continue and hand on this legacy in a way to the future, so that people can enjoy this and it can continue to be that building block of boys and girls' lives for years to come. Do I have any favorite camp memories that don't incriminate anyone else? I've learned to forget many.
I wouldn't know where to begin.
And the loincloth got sparks and fire, and he was doing an Indian dance that was impromptu.
I had brand new hiking boots, brand new pack, and I fell in the brook, and I was submerged for a little bit.
Should we go over to the island that says no trespassing and break the law, or should we chance drowning out in the water? And we had a long discussion about this.
And John Haratunian was a camper, and everybody else wore sneakers. He wore black leather shoes with leather soles.
And the bicycles rode through the middle of the dining hall, you know, just crazy things like that.
It's the best place in the whole wide world.